Hey, what's up guys? Today I have a new Haven Compensated on the bench. And this is a pretty cool watch. It looks like it lived a nice long service life. Somebody probably carried this for a long time. It's got a decent amount of patina. The dial is in great condition other than, some fading, some discoloration here and there. But I think it's a great looking watch, to be honest. These New Haven made these and sold them for about $1, from what I gather, between the 1920s and the 1950s. So they made millions of them, and there's tons of them out there if you want to work on one yourself. But I think this is a pretty cool watch. The hands are pretty crusty as we dive into this, so I'm going to be careful not to dent the dial there or do any damage to the hands. But yeah, we're using plastic to protect the dial as best we can, but this is going to require a little bit of force. These things are pretty caked on there. And, it might be because the crystal's been off for a long time. If you look on eBay, almost all of them I saw were missing the crystal. So I think just because it's kind of, you could see there's not much of a bezel there, they must just fall out over the years. But who knows? Maybe it was another design flaw. But anyways, we got the hands off there. Pull the second hand off there, the sub-second hand, that little guy. These usually don't take too much force, so I'm not too worried about that. Great deal. All right, so we're going to keep moving here. Remove the second hand. Yeah, just like that. We're well on our way. So New Haven, from what I gather, started in New Haven, Connecticut, obviously. And later down the road, they moved to Trenton, New Jersey. So I believe they also took that name, the Trenton Watch Company. But yeah, sadly, they went bankrupt in the 1950s. All right, so as we look at the back, you'll notice there's something stuck on there. And I don't know if that's resin or if that's finish from somebody's desk that it sat on too long. Who knows, but it's kind of a yellow substance. We're going to try getting that off as best we can later here. But for now, I'm just inserting a knife there in the seam, give it a little push and a wiggle, and we'll see what we got. And you can see the balance is kind of off to the side there. It's not doing too great. I think what happened is one of the screws must have came loose, and then that just gave enough room for the balance to come out. It's just kind of sandwiched in there between the upper and lower bridge, so I'm not super surprised. This is not a super sophisticated design, and you'll see as we get into it. All right, so now what we're going to do is start by removing the bridge to the main spring barrel. And you see there's a couple screws here. Nothing too eventful. Just pull those out. Be careful not to lose the screws. The nice thing about this is it's pretty robust. There's not a lot to go wrong here at this point. So we'll pull that bridge off, and you can see there's no cover on the barrel there. It's just kind of open. Springs greeting you there. Now, one thing I'm not really sure about here is I don't really know how to release the power on that, and you can see, it's wound up. So someone tried getting it running and hoped for the best, and it wasn't going, obviously, because the balance was there, but it's got some power in it. So we'll find out here when I remove the bridge. Hopefully stuff doesn't go flying or breaks anything, but yeah, we got to get this thing off and get that balance so it's not just flying around in there. Because if that spring breaks, we got a whole nother challenge here. But I'm going to hope for the best here, and we're just going to slowly lift this up, and yep, there it goes. So you just kind of hope for the best here. Like I said, I'm not really sure. This one's kind of different. I think if I removed the dial, I could probably work on the front to get it to let off a different way. But anyways, we'll know for next time. Everything looks fine, and yeah, we're just going to take that balance out of there. You can see how dirty this bridge is, and yeah, this is an interesting design. There's no jewels, so it's all kind of metal on metal, but it's lasted this long, so I think we're doing okay. But what we're going to do here is just continue to disassemble this. I've never worked on this movement, and my only experience on pocket watches is actually my last video on the tip top. So it's very similar to most of the Swiss movements I've worked on, but you can see it's kind of different. There's no jewels or anything like that. We've got kind of a goofy little all metal fork there. We'll pull the escapement out. Again, it's kind of different, but it's kind of nice because they're pretty robust. There's not a whole lot that can break there. So now we're kind of at that point where something's got to give. And I'm not really sure which way to go. So I think I'm going to probably remove the stem and that kind of thing, and we'll flip it over and get to the other side. Yeah, so we'll get out of the case. Again, I've never worked on this movement. Oh, some stuff fell out. So you're kind of learning with me here. Yeah, we've got one of the wheels. It's probably maybe the third wheel. Then we've got the barrel. And then it looks like we have the set lever, and not really sure what you call that other thing. That's like a I don't know. That holds the gear. So as you turn the stem, you can transfer that power into whatever you're trying to do. But anyway, so go back to here. We've got some options, but I think we're gonna remove. We'll try the center wheel. That's pretty seized up there, and I can only imagine because the hands were hard enough to get off. So we'll just pull the stem out for now. You can see that little plate I was talking about earlier actually kind of sandwiches around that gear there, and that holds that in place. Yeah, that looks great. All right, let's get the dial off now. With the stem out, we can separate it from the casing here, but this is easy to do. I just take a screwdriver and I kind of tip it one way and then tip it the other. And just kind of do your best not to scratch everything up and bend everything, but it's pretty easy procedure here. This is pretty standard and usually goes off without a hitch. You can break those if you overbend it. I generally try to bend it less than I think I need, and then you can always do it more. And then also be careful with the dial so you're not rubbing it around too much, because you never know. You don't want some ink to come off or something to get scratched up too bad or whatever. Just be careful. But you can see, no harm, no foul. Nice. I love that. All right, now for the fun part. Make sure not to lose our dial washer there. That's important, right? That just goes on top of the hour wheel. But let's see what we got here. We've got some fingerprints on the click wheel, and that's why it's important to wear your finger cots, people. But yeah, that shouldn't affect anything for us. But yeah, we can take the hour wheel off just like that, nice and easy. Now the center pinion, yeah, it's in there. All this stuff is probably riveted in. Yeah, you can see the silver top ones. Yeah, those are all riveted. So I can't do anything with those. We can't service it beyond, just whatever we can do to it in the bridge. But yeah, you can see the click there. Yeah, the click has its own spring, and it reminds me of one of the ones in a Seiko uses, like a Seiko 5 has. I worked on one of those, and I remember that spring, but it's similar to that, isn't it? Anyways, that moves the click. You can see it's it's probably like riveted. Looks like they put it in there and then they smack it down so it won't leave. That's fine. It shouldn't affect, we don't really need to clean it how it is. It'll be fine. That'll be good. But yeah, we need to get the center wheel out, and definitely need this center pinion. So let's get into that. It's in there, man. So what I'm doing is just wiggling and trying my best not to bend anything, break anything. I think we're gonna have to bring out the big guns again and try to pry it up just a little bit here. And again, I don't want to bend. I don't want to bend anything, so it's really low and slow here. And you can see we've got a little bit of movement, so I'm gonna flip it around here because I think this is probably less prone to breaking versus that big wheel. All right, yeah, we got it. Easy enough. All right, so that's coming out of there, and okay, no problem. There we go. Yeah, it's a little rusty crusty, but it's all good. All right. Oh, so you can see that little thing there? I didn't notice that, but that's how it was held together so well. Okay, so we'll have to keep that in mind for putting it back together. It's just kind of like a little, I don't know what you'd call that, like a little grommet, just a little pressure fit thing to keep those together. So we just want to make sure not to lose that. So we're going to pull this spring off, and I don't know. I think everything's probably not, like this is not going to come out, I don't think. We'll try, yeah. I think it's pretty good. Yeah, like I said, a lot of this stuff is just not meant to come out, and we're just going to leave it. So I'm going to load everything into these little baskets for cleaning. There's that little tiny bit there, that little grommet thing. Yeah, we're going to load everything in here, and then we're going to clean it. Now, I don't have like a fancy watch cleaning machine or anything like that, so I actually will just, I'll load this into my ultrasonic, and I'll clean it for 5-10 minutes with a couple drops of just regular dish detergent, unscented dish detergent. And then what I'll do is dip it in some IPA, some isopropyl alcohol, and that should kind of take care of our little water problem, and then I'll dry all of that off. So that seems to work pretty well for me. In the future, I want to get something better, but as a hobbyist, just in my home, using what I already have, that's been doing the job really well, and I've been super happy with it. So what we're going to do here now, you could see this is actually the bridge for the spring barrel, the mainspring, and it's pretty nasty. So whether that's grease or rust, I'm not sure, but I'm just taking some pegwood here, and I'm just pre-cleaning everything, because there's nothing worse than getting it out of the ultrasonic and then realizing nothing's been done because it's just too nasty and caked on. I mean, we've got between 70 and 80, 90 years worth of grease depending on how old this thing is, so who knows? We're just going to give it the best shot at coming out clean. And, I'm just giving it that extra bit of care because this does make all the difference when it comes to cleaning. It doesn't really matter how good your detergent is or your cleaner. If you're not pre-cleaning, who knows what you're going to get. So as you can see, it's already looking much better. It's got some wear marks and whatever else, but just that brown grease and rust or whatever that is off of there. So we've got the click wheel here, and you can see this thing's got some weird marks on it. Those won't come off, but they're fine. And then our wheel here, you can see it's got some marks on it and whatever else. I'm just doing my best, to be honest. I didn't even buy this watch to keep. It just kind of came with a watch I wanted. So I think we're going to do our best here. I'm not super worried about how perfect it comes out. But I think if we can get it going, this will be a lot of fun. And this is a really big learning experience for me. Like I said, I've never even worked on a movement similar to this. So I'm just kind of doing my best here to clean things up. And I'll just be happy if this thing runs in the end, to be honest. I'm kind of confident because I did just fumble through that last one. And that's on my channel if you want to check it out. The file got corrupted, so yeah. I don't have the greatest video there. But yeah, you can see this fork is pretty weird in my book. It's just like a little metal chunk with a couple pins at the bottom. And it works, I think. We'll see, I guess. But yeah, this is pretty lo-fi. But yeah, we're just doing our best here at cleaning it. And you just want to be careful with those pivots. I'm using the Rodico here, that sticky stuff, to stick it in there and hold it. I'm just getting rid of any wood pulp I can as I go too, because who knows? I don't want that stuff stuck in the basket. I think it'll come out, but you never know. You just want to do your best to make sure your parts can come out clean. So yeah, we'll load all that in there, and then we'll turn our attention here to the mainspring. Now, we're going to first pull out the arbor, and that's that middle part there. And yeah, that looks pretty good. I mean, it's pretty crusty, but it's not all rusted out or anything. One thing to keep in mind is make sure you keep note of what orientation your spring is, whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise. That's super important. But all I'm doing here is I'm using a dental pick, because this is a pretty beefy spring. And normally I would just be able to kind of pull it out with my tweezers, but it's pretty chunky. Yeah, and I'm just kind of walking it around, making sure whatever's left in the barrel I'm supporting with my finger so it doesn't go flying. That's no fun. No one wants a spring to the face. But you can see I'm just kind of walking it around. And yeah, almost there. This part's pretty satisfying, to be honest. A lot of people hate this, but I think that's pretty fun. Now this one, keep in mind it has a little tab to hold the end of the spring in place. So we're just going to keep that in mind. Once we get it clean, you can see it just kind of friction fits in there, and then the tension of the spring holds it. So again, I'm just making sure all this is clean. There's nothing worse than taking all this time and energy to work on a watch, and then you put it together and it's not running well because you kind of skimped on the cleaning. But yeah, I'm just using IPA again. I'm just doing a quick and dirty cleaning of that with some pegwood. And yeah, we're going to tighten that up, and then we're going to take this to the ultrasonic. But in the meantime, I'm going to just kind of take a look at the case and make sure any pre-cleaning is done there. I'm not 100% sure what this is. Yeah, it looks, I don't know. I can't tell if it's some sort of resin or if someone just had it sitting on a desk for a long time and the varnish kind of heated up and stuck to it. It could be really anything, Who knows? It could have been stored on top of someone's dresser for 50 years. And the sun warmed up the top of the dresser. There's a dresser out there somewhere with a pocket watch sized stain on the top, maybe. Who knows? But anyways, I'm just taking the pegwood, and then I switched over to a little bit harder of a tool here. That's just like I don't know what you call that thing, just a little plastic pointer deal. And I don't want to scratch it any more than it is, but that stuff's pretty gnarly. And I think you could probably let it soak in alcohol for a really long time, and then it would soften up enough that you don't need that mechanical force. But I think it'll be okay. Everything seems to be coming off pretty decent, and I'm not really too worried. I just don't want a bunch of chunks of stuff. All right, so this has been bugging me. There's been grease and all kinds of stuff all over my work surface here. Clean that up, and then we're going to take this to ultrasonic. All right, so you can see I've literally just got water and a little bit of dish detergent, I think probably 3 drops in that whole big area. And, I bought this ultrasonic cleaner to clean records a while back, and it comes in so handy. I use it all the time for all kinds of stuff. But, yeah, the cavitations, the little tiny bubbles that are created in there help clean it. And, yeah, it works great. So, like I said, I just literally dunk the baskets in some IPA afterwards, some alcohol, and, alcohol kind of reacts with the water and kind of sucks it in, and your 99 turns to 97% or whatever, and then you're left with parts that are able to dry a little bit easier. So after all that's said and done, all I do is I literally just take my little air blower, and this is actually one for a camera, so it's a little bit beefier than the one most people use for something like your balance, but you can see it just blasts the water or the alcohol right off. So now we're just going to oil the spring and get it ready for assembly. And you can see I'm just put a little bit of grease on my cots, and I'm just rubbing it in there. This is a pretty thick spring, so I just kind of did my best there. I don't have a spring tool like you see people wind them up and put them in. I just always do it by hand. I don't know. I don't really mind putting it in by hand. And so if you're a novice and you're like, man, I don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on this obscure little tool, you can get away with doing it without. A lot of people think this is the worst process and it's super tedious. Again, I think it's kind of cool. This feels very exciting to me. Like at any given time, this thing could fly off and poke your eye out. So I think it's kind of fun, to be honest. But you can see I just kind of switched from back and forth to kind of just using my thumbnail through the cot, and I'm just kind of doing my best to ride that edge and get it in there. Once you get enough in, it just kind of sits into place and make sure it's good. So I'm just going to add a little grease to this, just where the arbor is going to be touching. And just a little goes a long way. You don't want this thing dripping, but there's a decent amount of friction there, so we're just going to add some grease. And, I'm sure there's a better way to do this or some rhyme or reason, but I just kind of use a little logic and think what's going to be rubbing, and then, I'll add a couple little strands of grease along the top just because the bridge is going to be touching. But yeah, so we're just going to shove the arbor in there, and keep in mind there's kind of like a little prong that sticks out, and that's just going to engage with the spring there. So you can see it there. No problem. Everything's going smoothly. I'm going to add a couple drops of oil just here because, our bridge, that's going to be touching there and rubbing. There's no jewels, so yeah, we'll just make sure we do our best there. All right, so we're going to start assembling the train of wheels with the center wheel here. And I think you could put in that center wheel pinion on the other side and kind of lock that into place, but I opted not to, and I'm not sure if that's smart or not, but we'll try it out. So now we're putting in the third wheel, and then the fourth wheel, and I think the fourth probably goes on top. So the fourth wheel has actually got like a long pivot that goes through to the other side. So you have to be kind of careful because I don't have this in a movement holder. So if I put any force down on the soft pad, it will actually wheel that wheel, because it's sticking through. So ideally we'd have a movement holder, but I don't have one that big. I don't work on pocket watches very often, at least yet. And then we're putting the escape wheel in. It's got its own little kind of like island with a hole in the middle. Again, there's no jewels, so it's kind of weird for me. This is all it feels very chaotic, but it's so similar to, like a Swiss movement or whatever. Like, it feels familiar, but it also feels a little bit like what's going on here. All right, so we're putting the fork in, and this is just annoying. The fork has these little prongs that stick down, and they just knock into the escape wheel and just knock it out constantly. So, I had to do that probably 30 times, and it would just it was super annoying. And the tip top was this exact same way. And it would be great if there's a separate, bridge so that I could do these steps independently. But you know what? We don't have that. So we're going to do what we got to do here. All right. So there's one bridge for everything, essentially. And so we've got to combine these little guys here. And that plate's going to hold our gear in place. And right there. Nope. This is kind of fiddly. It doesn't really register well, and it's fine. But you're just balancing it the whole time, and it's just kind of, it feels a little chaotic to me. You know what I mean? Like, this is, I think I mentioned earlier, this feels like working on something like a Timex where you're like, oh man, I don't think they had me in mind when they made this thing. It's like how cheap can we make this so we can get it in the most hands possible? And we'll kind of worry about the comfort of whoever's working on it later. So yeah, you can see. Okay. Yep. Oh. Okay. Yeah. I'm just over it at this point. But yeah, so we get that back in there, and then we have to go back because, of course, every time you touch the movement, you're knocking over the wheels and doing whatever else. So there's a lot of back and forth here. This has got to be one of the worst ways to design a watch. Like, I've worked on numerous watches, and to have everything like essentially like all of the pivots, all of those little points have to make the corresponding hole in the bridge. And if they don't, then you're toast. And that's always, in my experience, worrying about breaking pivots and lining everything up. That's always one of the hardest parts in general for me. A lot of prep work goes into it and whatever else. But this is like, screw it. We're doing all of them at one go. And then the balance is hooked to it. So the balance is just, we're just in absolute chaos here. That balance has to line up as best as possible. And if you've worked on watches at all, this is like this is like a lot. So we've got to line up the keyless works side there. There's a hair. Get rid of that. We got to line up the keyless works here. And there's kind of a registration mark there. That kind of slots in. And somehow I miraculously got it in like the first try. But you'll see I'm not so lucky in the future. A little foreshadowing there. So I'm just going to put in one screw here. And then without the bridge in place, I'm going to put another one here loosely. Because if you look, we're going to have to figure out how to get that balance not only in its pivots, but also lined up with the fork properly. So I'm just taking a set of tweezers here, and then you can see, I'm kind of inserting it into the fork there and pulling it into its pivots. I just kind of use my finger to open up the bridge just enough that it would fall into those pivots. And then I'm just testing it here. And there's no wind on the spring, so it's just going to go back and forth a little bit. But without moving too much and holding this down, I'm going to insert a couple more screws here. And then we can remove the ones for the mainspring barrel bridge, so that we can actually get the bridge back in place. Yeah, this surprisingly went super well. I said in the last video, the tip top, which was similar to this, man, it took me like 30 minutes per time of trying to get that bridge in. So for it to just work essentially perfectly that time, I don't know what I did. I mean, I've had a little practice, I guess, from all of those times, but man, that felt good. So just getting the screws in there. And I don't know about you guys, I'm always really bad at lining them up the first time. They always fall over and fall onto the works on my workbench and all that good stuff. But we got it in there. We're doing good. These are pretty huge screws compared to what I'm working on. So I'm using my largest flathead, which, I don't know if at this point I've ever used for anything other than maybe like, I don't even know, emotional support, like I don't use it very often. So this is kind of nice. I watch a bunch of wristwatch revival videos, and Marshall's always saying, like, if you're getting into this, start with a pocket watch because everything's so much bigger. And man, he's not joking. I don't know if I would start with this because I don't think this particular type of watch where it's all kind of sandwiched together is super easy to work on. I'm not going to lie. Maybe start with a nicer watch that has separate bridges. This, to me, this feels like a challenge. This is kind of like making something out of nothing here. And, this is like a challenge of will. But I'm just going to oil and grease the pivot points there. Like I said, there's no jewels here. So I'm just going to do my best to gauge this and try to, get enough lubricant in there, but not too much, it's kind of a balance. So yeah, I'm just using thinner stuff for the gears that move faster. And then I'll transition into, more of a grease for these slower moving parts. I'm just kind of feeling it out here. All right, we're just making sure that after all of those procedures, the balance is still moving, and it is, so let's keep going. It's just always good to check it out so you don't get too far along and then something's falling out of place or binding or whatever. All right, we're gonna add a little grease to the detent right there, or I don't know what you call that thing, like part of the detent to remove the stem. And then we're gonna add a little bit of oil here to the center pivot. Now I'm just, again, going by feel. What I did to one side, I did to the other, and I'm trying to match as best as possible. And where everything meets the bridge, I'm just making sure that there's just a little bit there. Again, try not to overdo it, but I don't know. This watch seems very new to me, and I don't really know best practice. So to be honest, I'm just kind of feeling it out. So we're putting that center. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah. Okay, that was satisfying. We got it in there. Oh, and we need to remember that little, I don't know what you want to call this thing, that little tiny washer deal. But I'm just going to add a little oil there. I don't know how much friction's at play here, or a little grease, I should say. But I'm going to put a little bit there, and then we're going to put that bad boy on. I'm not really sure the best technique here either. I'm going to actually use a hand pusher tool here. You put the hands on. I'm just going to try that. And I'm pushing against the soft pad here, so I'm not giving it a ton of force because, of course, that's just going to kind of move out of the way underneath. But you can see it moved a little bit. I'm going to push it back. And then I just want to make sure it's on there so it's not coming off. But yeah, I think we're getting there. I'm just going to keep pushing it and hit it one more time, and I think we'll be good. Yeah, there we go. That's great. Look at that. We're moving right along. Man, I can't wait for that balance to start moving. Seeing it spin like that, just kind of freely. All right, so I'm going to add a little bit of oil to the, the center pivot there. And, we're going to... Great. Yeah, there we go. That's great. Make sure, and we got to remember our little washer, Don't forget the little washer guy. All right, so we got to put this bad boy in there, and I can't remember which way it goes, so I'm going to feel it out. And then I realize, oh boy, we got to take out the mainspring barrel because that, that's kind of our click wheel on the other side, and we need to make sure these are mated together on the other side. And this is kind of weird, normally on like a Swiss movement, they're kind of side by side. This is on the other side, and it's kind of unique, but I'm sure this is more common than I think, but I've never worked on a watch like this. So, prior to the tip top, the cursed video. So we were able to replace that barrel, put it back together, and smooth sailing. This feels good. I feel like we're under control here. I'm managing well under pressure. Like I said, this is it's simple and everything's pretty robust, but man, it just feels chunky. And yeah, we're adding, we'll add a little bit of spring to it, hit it with the blower, and who knows the last time this thing's been running. So sometimes it takes a second to really get up to full speed, as the oil moves around and things like that, but we got it. So we let that die down here. So we're not quite done yet. We'll celebrate soon. We add that little washer back to keep everything in place once you put the dial on. And the only trick here is making sure you line up that sub-second hand, that little second hand at the bottom. We want to make sure that that's in the center of the hole so that, everything lines up. But more importantly, you just want to make sure that little second hand isn't rubbing up against the side of the dial, because then it won't run right. The friction will actually stop it'll stop the balance. So I just use the back of my tweezers usually and just kind of flatten down those. You can see the movements going again, so you know the end is in sight, if you will. This has been kind of a fun watch to work on. It's been a challenge for me, but yeah, it's a pretty cool watch. I think the movement is super efficient and like simply made. I think that's cool. I have some respect for that, but it's kind of a pain. But I'm enjoying myself. I don't know about you guys, but this is fun. So, and all right. So at this moment, I knew I messed up. This is where the foreshadowing comes from. I had to take it all apart because I realized I couldn't get the watch to set properly. It wouldn't click in and out like it should, and it just wasn't working right? So what I realized after the fact is the setting spring, that's that little spring right there. You can kind of see me manipulating. It was on the wrong side of that little thing. So I don't know what you call that thing, like a setting lever something. Anyways, that's what actuates when you pull the stem in and out. And that's what lines the gears up properly so that you can either set the time or crank the watch up, wind the watch. So anyways, long story short, that was backwards, so it wasn't working the way it should. So I had to do the whole thing, line everything up. It took me a good 20 minutes. So that was kind of a bummer, but afterwards we got the stem in and everything worked. So one thing that I learned from a forum is you actually have to turn the watch kind of upside down and this little bit drops through with gravity, and then that's how you can insert the stem. So it's pretty smart, it's pretty ingenious, but you can't do it with the dial side facing down. You actually have to flip it over, and that little thing just moves out of the way, and then that's how it keeps it from turning upside down and the stem coming out like in your pocket or whatever. So it's pretty smart, but yeah, that's something I had to learn. So a couple forums later, I found it, and that made my life a lot easier. So we're going to start by putting the hands back on. I just do my best to line it up at 12. You can pick really any number. The important thing is getting on there. And, like I said, I don't work on pocket watches very often, and so I actually don't have a big enough, press or whatever you want to call it, the little tool to push it down. I don't have a big enough hand pusher for that one, so I just ended up using some pliers, and then I'm going to use the pusher here for that. Now you'll notice that I didn't line it up perfectly. That's because it took me about a minute of messing around, so I just guesstimated and put it there. So hopefully they'll line up and all that good stuff when the clock's in use. So I'm going to put the second hand on there. All right, so we're going to put the back of the case on, and you can see it cleaned up pretty well. I decided not to polish this or anything like that. I just wanted it to look as original as possible. I find that's kind of the sweet spot for me, having something that works like new but looks like it's been around. I'm just going to run it around to make sure the hands don't rub or anything like that. But you know what, guys? I had a great time on this one, and I hope you got a kick out of it. I'm having a great time learning and growing in my watch making endeavors here. And I'm glad you're just along for the ride. Drop any questions you have in the comment. I can try to do my best to answer. Or if you have any tips for me, drop them, because, I'm just here to learn and have a good time and keep these watches going. I'll probably gift this to somebody down the line once I get the crystal. For the time being, it's going to sit on my workstation and tick away. So hope you guys enjoyed this, and like and subscribe, all that good stuff if you did, and we'll see you for the next one.